science behind this hasn't been studied enough or talked about enough for us to make a real full opinion. I do agree girls' sports are for girls.
You said this hasn't been studied enough to know that, look, we've got millions of years of study. Men and women are different, and that's why it's unfair to put boys in girls' sports. We don't need to have any more biological studies. It is fundamentally unfair.
But do you see, genuinely curious, any accommodations that are reasonable? You have a 16-year-old who wants to participate in sports. In your mind, is there any way that that can happen that is fair?
Of course. Have the people participate with their own biological sex. Boys in boys sports, girls in girls sports. It's worked for a very long time in this country.
But it's not that simple anymore, Scott. That's where we are. So what do you do when it's
simple to 80% of the country?
But it's not that anymore. So what do you do with the 20%? Do we ignore them?
Yeah,
do
pretty
we
much. I mean, it's an 80-20 issue.
Scott, everybody's ignoring that.
And you just said it was a minuscule number.
It's
if it's minuscule, why do we have to upend?
We don't have to. The reason why I said it was a minuscule number, Scott, was because I don't think it's fair that you're scaring people at home thinking that boys are trying to compete in girls sport by the droves and that this is going to take over, and you were scaring people at home. It's just not happening, Scott.
But this is like the most competitive track meet in the country.
Welcome to the Informator.net. Okay, well, this is my first time watching that video, or watching this video. First of all, you got to give some props to Keith Jennings. I've seen other clips of his, and I mean, it's funny that he's the breadwinner for CNN. Who would think a conservative would be the breadwinner for CNN? None of the other hosts that you see there, none of those crazy leftists are doing anything for CNN. But you bring on Keith Jennings, and he goes to town on them. He does this whole whack-a-mole thing with them, like he just pounds them down into the sand one by one, and he makes the show funny. And when I see his clips, I mean, they're nothing short of phenomenal. Always crack me up. But here we go with this thing again. I don't understand why. Well, I do understand. It's just crazy that this is a topic. It shouldn't be a topic. It's a ridiculous thing. It's silly. It's not something that we should be wasting our time on. These politicians, they can't help, champion for these odd, terrible, demonic type things. And so here I am having to talk about it. When I would think, say 20 years ago, whenever I thought about the end of the world, when I read reading my Bible and stuff, when I considered, the end of the world, how it would happen, what type of sin would be about, you had an idea what would happen. But honestly, this one kind of blindsided me. Like, there is sort of this cross-dressing, trans types in the Bible. I think it's only mentioned a couple of times. Maybe more. I'm not a preacher. Like I said, I don't remember everything I read. But I remember reading it like once, or for sure. This is not one of the things I really thought would be. What I actually thought would be going on today would be the whole, adults having sexual relations with children. I thought that would be more mainstream by now, and it's not. Thank God. Thank God it's not. But I mean, there are those that would probably want that to be. Well, let's answer some of the questions. Some of the people on the panel were like trying to basically say, can't we have room for this? Why can't this exist? There is people in the population, and they try to say it's 20%, which it's not. And if it is, it's only because of the brainwashing, which is even worse. So that just opens up another ball of wax there. But let's just say it's 20%. Okay, let's just go with that, which I don't believe it is. The reason why we can't allow this to happen, because of where we're at today. The fact that this is even an issue, it's a stupid thing. It's a horrendous thing. There's no value in it. You're trying to appease some people that are confused because they were let to be confused by their parents, probably pushed into being confused. And so you're telling me that we need to worry about their feelings over, over our daughters, our great women of our country that are trying to compete, do their darndest to get to the position to actually have an opportunity to be considered one of the best at what they do. You want to strip that away to make this, I'm sorry to say, but a lower class being, a lower class citizen, to make them more happy, to feed their psychosis, to feed their fantasy and make them worse. It's not going to make them any better. It's going to make them worse because it's already crazy land we're talking about here. It's crazy land, and you're just going to feed into that, and you're going to make them worse. That's what's going to happen. It's like I said in my last video. Psychology. It's all psychology. The human mind can be manipulated and it can be twisted, and given the environment, given certain aspects you can add in, like drugs, those things can really harm a person. They can really change a person. Almost everybody has either heard a story, if they haven't been affected by it directly, they've heard stories of people that, have lived normal lives and done great accomplishments, or done even the basic of accomplishments, getting, having a successful job, a successful marriage, the regular Joe next door, the regular Jane next door. We've all heard these stories of that person snapping or having this radical shift in who they were and now have become something that, for the lack of better words, detestable. We've seen stories of people that have done the highest crimes of committing murder to just being radicalized to where things they believed not too long ago have totally flipped, and now that person is basically shunning all their family members because they believe in a cause that's just morbid and off. Doesn't really make any sense. What I'm saying is there's no good that comes of this. So no, we shouldn't allow it. We shouldn't allow any of these type of things that just keep destroying the fabric of our nation. Mostly because of the way it affects the youth. Because the youth are the future generations, and if adults allow stupidity and corruptness to run rampant like we're doing right now with even debating, things like this, the young people see this, and what do you expect out of them? What do you think they're going to mimic? You tear their minds apart, especially which is really sad because many adults don't teach their kids. They just assume that I'm normal, my husband or my wife's normal, my kid's going to come out normal. That's just not the way it works. If that was the way it worked, then the Israelites would have never have left God several times in the Bible and had their land taken from them, or them being exiled from the land, because it always happens in generations. That's what the Bible says. So that just goes to tell you that just because mom and dad are good Christian people doesn't mean their children are going to be good Christian kids and grow up to be good Christian people. I just wrote an article, and sadly to say, it's one of my lesser read articles, and I think it's so important because the whole topic is about raising your kids in the Christian way, because it is really important. If you think that just because you're decent people that your kids won't get corrupted, you are totally off on that. You got to understand the world. It can be more influential than you if you allow it to be, because it's constant. Children are constantly going to be bombarded by, corruption. If a parent isn't showing by force that they should be the ones to be listened to, if they don't talk to their kids constantly about the right ways, about being godly, if they don't do these things, constant, and I mean constant, I mean like almost every day, every week, all the time. Like I said, okay, maybe that's a little hyperbolic. Not every second of the day, but you should always be talking about God. God can come out of your mouth a few times a day. There's nothing wrong with that. should never feel like there's something wrong with you. You should never feel like, I don't want to talk about God too much because I'm going to bore my child or whatever. It shouldn't be the case. If you're doing it at an early age, then they'll understand. When you bring up God, it's because you're doing it a teachable moment. They'll appreciate it. But this topic right here is just like I said, it's a silly topic, and I hate that we have to talk about it. But this is what's in the news, and I'm glad that, like me, I'm just starting. I don't really have much of a voice. The few people that listen to me, I hope that whatever I'm saying, seeps into your mind and proves to be true to you. But I know there's much bigger voices out there like Riley Gaines that are really on this topic, and whether she's like I know she's doing it for the right things. It's made her popular, and sure, it's made her some money, but it's not bad that she's pushing it. It's something that needs to be done. People need to do it, and I'm glad she's taken that route and that opportunity and has been talking about this. So, kudos to her. So to bring some context to this conversation, hey Chatty, how many times did the Israelites get exiled from their land in the Old Testament?
The Israelites were exiled from their land a couple of significant times in the Old Testament. The major ones were the Assyrian exile in the 8th century BCE and the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE. These events had a huge impact on their history and writings.
And then what? How about the New Testament, where they weren't exiled, but they were occupied by the Romans, correct?
Exactly. In the New Testament period, the Israelites weren't exiled, but they were living under Roman occupation. The Romans had control over Judea, and that definitely shaped a lot of the context of the New Testament events.
And how many times in the Old Testament was the land occupied? So even though they weren't exiled, they were being ruled by others.
In the Old Testament, the land of Israel experienced several periods of foreign rule, influenced during the time of the Judges, the rule of the Philistines in certain regions, and later the domination by empires like the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Each of these periods brought different challenges and influences on the Israelites.
And wasn't it because most of the time the reason why this happened was because they were close to God, they were following God, and then they kind of just went astray, and so that was kind of the punishment for them leaving, going astray from God?
Yes, that's a common theme in the Old Testament. Many times when the Israelites strayed from their covenant with God by worshipping idols or not following his commandments, they faced consequences. These often came in the form of foreign domination or exile. It was seen as a way to bring them back to their faith and reliance on God.
All right, cool. Thanks, man. Done with that conversation for now. I mean, the reason why I bring that up is because, how long before America can keep sliding down this path of unrighteousness and think that, just like what happened to the Israelites, that will have this breakdown in society. I just want to make it clear, as an individual, it's difficult. It's difficult to be, a great person. It's difficult to be good all the time, I should say. I don't think it's difficult to be a good person. So let me rephrase that. I don't think it's difficult to be a good person or a great person. But I think it's difficult to not show the sides of yourself that are, that are not the best of you. In like social media, sometimes I wonder, and this is just a wonder, like sometimes I wonder if it's there to kind of bring out the ugliness in us, because it sure does. I mean, it does to me. Sometimes, like I said, when I'm on social media, which is usually on X, I talk the way I am now because this is a part of me, a huge part of me. But then there's times where I'm trolling, and there's been a few times I probably said some things I shouldn't have said. I believe most of us are guilty of that. And sometimes I just wonder if social media is there to kind of record you at your worst moments, if it can. Because I think things that you say can be brought back up to you. And I'm not worried about what other people say. You know, other people can say, "Well, you said this or you said that." People have the right to flip flop and change depending on information. Like you can believe in something 4 years from now, 4 years ago, and then somebody gives you really good information or some good evidence comes to fruition, and you now have a different belief or different thought. You know, that's more a different perspective, and there's nothing wrong with that. People should be allowed to do that, and it should be actually encouraged, because who wants to stay in the dark or, you know, basically just be a dumbass? I mean, if you can learn more or be, you know, get the information you need to be right on a subject, you should take that opportunity. Um, so I'm not really worried though about what people want to bring up. Hey, you said this 2 years ago, or you said this 6 months ago, you said this 3 weeks ago, and then you made a video, and now you're talking about God after you said this. I'm not really worried about if people do that kind of stuff, because it's one of those things. Like, here's an analogy. I don't know. I'm older, so there used to be that show Jerry Springer. So some of you listening may remember this, but like on these talk shows like Jerry Springer, whenever they bring on a guest, they'll bring out their past or whatever they did, and sometimes it would be something of this nature. It'd be like, and John, though he's married to Christy, you know, she says he's watching porn like every day, and then all the crowd will be like, boo, boo, and they'd be all angry, and if they had tomatoes in their hands, they'd probably throw them at the guy. And I would watch that and I would think to myself, like, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people in that crowd that have done some of the things John is being accused of, but when people get together like that, they become this righteous entity. Like, we never do anything wrong, so we can do that. We can stone you because we don't do anything wrong. And that's how my mind would work when I see that. Like, it's just not true. You know, like I said, uh, it's hard to live a straight arrow Gennaro type life. I don't fault anybody, so I'm not really worried if other people tell me stuff, because at the end of it all, right, all that really matters is what God thinks of you. If you're disappointed in the way you're acting and you ask for forgiveness and you pray, I think that's what He wants from you. And I think most of us are that way. Like, you know, like I said, I say things, I do things. I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. We all are, as far as I know. I do believe there's some way better people than me. I have no problem saying that. But I believe most of us are sinners, and we have moments where we're not at our best. But I would say, don't take to heart what others tell you, unless your sin is so big that you're not even, you know, you are a bad guy. You know, you are doing a lot of bad things, and you're just descending into darkness. Who knows what? But like I said, I've seen people, I know people that are Christians, they're good Christian people, and they may get upset at something, and then they'll have some words, or they say some things, or maybe even maybe they drink a little bit too much, um, or whatever. You know, people have their moments, but that doesn't make anybody bad, or like, you know, you're a terrible, unworthy person. I don't believe that is the case. So I have enough brains not to do that to people, but I also know in this day and age with social media and me putting myself out here like I'm doing right now, there's always going to be a clown that wants to say something or put you in a category, and that's fine, because what I'm striving for is to bring a message about God, because that's, as I'm saying right now, this is a big part of me. It's not all of me. You know, somebody might uh ask, hey AP, do you ever have a beer? Do you drink? And I would say, yes, I do. The problem is that I'll never give any advice on those things to people. Like, I'm not going to tell you it's okay to drink as long as this is this. No, I don't do that, because one thing I don't want to do is steer anybody in the wrong direction. What I will say is, I'll answer that question honestly and say, yes, I do have drinks here and there. And like I'm saying, I'm not squeaky clean. If I'm telling you something about God that I've read that's clearly in the Bible, I don't think you should disgrace the Bible or discredit the Bible because a follower isn't doing exactly all the things he should be doing or she should be doing. The Bible is the Bible. It's the word of the Lord, and it can't be broken. It's the truth. It's good. And whatever you do in your life, you may not mimic that Bible, but at the same time, as an outside observer, I wouldn't look at somebody and say, so and so is acting a fool. It's because he's reading that Bible. That would be false. Anyone that reads the Bible knows that the Bible does nothing but tell you to do the right things and the good things. People that try to look into the Old Testament and look for things that to discredit the Bible, saying, "Well, hey, back then in the Bible, they did this or they did that." Like, you know what? Also, the Bible is history, because those stories in the Old Testament, they kind of tell you. Well, it tells you a lot of things, but some of the stuff it's doing is documenting the history in the past and showing you the pitfalls that a land and people get into, and it still applies to you today. So that's how you look at it. You can sometimes look at the land of Israel and just see the body of work of yourself. And like, as the land of Israel, when they would get exiled because the generations went away from God, that is also you. You can look at that and say, this is your body right here. If you act as if Israel did in those times, then you can expect calamity in your own life. And that's the interpretation. Like I said, it's not the only interpretation. There's a lot of interpretations, but that is one interpretation that I believe is a part of the Old Testament. So, like I said, someone trying to bring up things in the Bible to discredit it, that they'd be wrong, because you have to keep going. And once you get to Jesus, you'll see that some things have changed along the way. There's a new covenant as well. So that's backing up my argument, as things do change as you go forward. It's not to say the past is thrown out completely or anything of that nature. I'm just saying things change and progress in the Bible. And then once you read both sides, because I know there's some people that only want to read the New Testament, I think you're only getting half the story if you do that. The Old Testament is very worthy of your reading because, as I said, you kind of learn a lot in the Old Testament about yourself, learn about the history, right? And there's so many other things I'll probably forget to mention, but you're learning the history, of how it all began. Get the whole picture and hopefully make you a more complete individual, and especially in your knowledge and your wisdom of it all, because like I said, it's important. It's not I don't think you should just rely on the New Testament. The Old Testament is much needed. It's much needed material. Plus, you got all the prophecies that will point to Jesus Christ and in the end times and those things as well. Like I said, there's a lot of things sometimes my brain doesn't work fast enough to get it all to you. So that's why in some of my other videos, I'll bring up other things I may have not mentioned in the last video. What was the last two videos? One was on race, assimilation, and the Wesley Huff one, which, like I said, there's a whole lot of things in the Wesley Huff video. There was a whole lot of things there that I may have not mentioned. I know there's a few things, but I think I got the gist of the point out, which is, you got to stand by what God says. We know there's, has Huff stated, hyperbole. There's a lot of that in the Bible. We don't need to prove that. Like the way humans interact with each other, we can be hyperbolic in things we say. Like if I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, or whatever that saying is. Yes, that happens in the Bible too, of course. I don't even think that needs to be, it needed such a gangfold backing and showing the audience that, yes, it's hyperbole. There's hyperbole. No, there is hyperbole. Yes, there's some of that. But when God says clean the land, he really meant clean the land. Don't make excuses because you're worried about genocide, because most likely of what's happening right now in Israel and Gaza, which I hope I've been clear. I haven't really said what side or anything about the Israel right now in Gaza, what's going on, except for the simple fact I don't like it. I don't like people dying. I don't like kids dying. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't like war. I don't like those things, but I also understand that sometimes it happens where people, and in the times we live in, it happens. The problem is that because in this modern day, I'm going to ramble again, because we're in this modern day that most of the wars and fights that happen are really just unjust. You know, they just are. The reasons are usually stupid, and that's, to me, is the biggest concern. Uh, is sending out people to do dirty work. That bothers me. You know, but as far as Israel and the Palestinians go, all I can tell you is this: don't believe the people that say that the land was Palestine. It was their land. It's not. It has always been uh, Israel's land. It's been in ancient times. It was Israel's land in the ancient days. It is today. It should be today. There was a time, yes, that the Jews were not there, right? They were in Germany and all over Europe and so forth. And I believe it belonged to England. I may be wrong on that, but I think it belonged to the UK. I can always check that, to make sure. Chatty, did Israel belong to the UK before World War II?
Before World War II, the region that is now Israel was actually under British control as part of the British Mandate for Palestine. This mandate was established by the League of Nations after World War I and lasted until 1948, when the State of Israel was established.
Okay, that's good, Chatty. Thanks. So what I'm saying is, if you want to look at it that way, like it was Palestine's, it wasn't. They were there, they were occupying, but it wasn't their land. It belonged, like Chatty said, to the British. Was it the British Isles? You said British Isles, Chatty? Is that what you said it belonged to?
You're absolutely right in the sense that it was under British administration.
Okay, hold on. That's good, Chatty. Thanks. So see, the British Isles, that's who it belonged to. So you can't really even say it was Palestine's. It wasn't theirs either, if that's the way you want to argue. But my argument is that God gave the Israelites that land a long time ago. A long time ago, it was theirs, and they're there today. And that should make, if you're a non-believer, you're just never going to want to hear my argument anyways. But if you are a believer, or you're just kind of in the middle, you just don't know, like just wanting to know, well, the truth is the land was always given to Israel, so they're there now, and that should actually be something that convinces you that it is special. And if you think of the Bible, it's actually prophesized. Am I correct, Chatty? Wasn't it prophesied that Israel would regain the land back? And a lot of people see that as a fulfilling of that prophecy.
Yes, you're right. Many people see the return of the Israelites to their land as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. There are scriptures in the Bible, especially in the books of Ezekiel and Isaiah, that talk about the gathering of the Jewish people back to their homeland. So for many believers, that's a significant sign.
Not to mention the 6-day war, right? That's another prophecy, I believe. Because I think in the Bible it says a country would be made in a day or something of that nature.
Yes, the 6-day war is often seen as a modern miracle by many believers. The idea of a nation being born in a day is often linked to Isaiah 66:8, where it talks about a nation being brought forth in a moment. Many people see the rapid victory in the 6-day war as aligning with that kind of prophetic imagery.
Thank you. So see, like I'm saying, so like Dave Smith, I know he's a big proponent of Israel, and I mean of against the bloodshed that's going on in Israel, I should say. But a lot of these times, these guys try to mention that, the land was really the Palestinians, and Israel is the one that kind of butted in and took it over, which is not true. The land belonged to the British Isles, as you just heard, and it was given back to Israel, which fulfilled a prophecy. And, Dave Smith is not, he's barely, I believe, trying to get into religion, so he doesn't really know this. I'm sure he doesn't, or else he would have stated that. But he doesn't know that. He's just upset with the bloodshed, and with good reason. Who wants that? What I can tell you is that, like I said, I'm not a fan, because I don't read every paper or anything. I don't know everything about what's going on, but the things I do know that's going on, what bothers me the most is that, the Palestinians are a weak people. They don't have a military. The Hamas is their military, which is a terrorist group, and I know that, and I know a lot of people know that. But what I don't like is how Hamas hides with the civilians. That's well known. Most people should know that they hide within the civilians because they like Israel to look bad whenever they, defend themselves, because civilians die, and it makes good publicity, and it makes the Jews look bad, the Israelis look bad. So what I don't like though is that they are such a weak people. And just so I'm accurate, because, well, let me see. Hey, Chatty, Israel, what what are they asking from us mostly? Right now they're having their conflict with the Palestinians. What do they ask the United States for? Like, why are we involved in this at all?
Well, Israel and the United States have a strong alliance, and historically the US has provided Israel with a lot of support, including military aid, diplomatic.
But see, what I want to know is specifically, what do they want from us in this? See, I know we're an ally, but what do they want when it comes to the Palestinians? Do they want money? Do they want artillery? Do they want technology? Do they just want us to hold Iran back? What are they seeking from us?
That's a great question. In the context of the conflict with the Palestinians, Israel often looks to the US for a few key things: diplomatic support in international forums, military aid that includes both funding and advanced technology, and sometimes strategic assistance to counter other regional threats like Iran. So it's a mix of financial, military, and diplomatic backing that they're generally looking for.
So see that's the thing. I just don't want to back them financially and with military. I don't, because this is like their little conflict. And I think because a lot of women, children, and those type of people are getting killed, unlike the Canaanites in that old story, we don't know of any prophet that said this was cool. The only thing I do know is that Israel is supposed to regain its land. And that's why I mentioned in one of my videos that I do want the Palestinians to leave. I would prefer them leave somehow. But I don't agree with the killing and all that. And that's because of God's nature that he put in me. It makes me feel bad, because remember, all emotion and everything you have, God gave that to you. He knew it first, because if you have it, God has it. So I don't really like that. And my belief is, if we don't give them Israel aid or military support, if it's a just war, God's going to help them anyways. That's what I believe. It's not testing God. I just believe that if it's a just war, God's going to help them. But mostly what I'm saying is Palestine looks really weak. I think Israel can get their ground forces, go in there and get rid of Hamas that way, without having to be bombing and doing these things that hurt so many people. And then the whole blocking the aid, I'm not a fan of those things. And like I said, but that's their discretion. It's their land. You know what I mean? If we were being, invaded or having a conflict with, say, the cartels in Mexico or something, along the lines of that, we're not going to want to hear other countries tell us what to do. If it's our conflict, we're going to do what we have to do. And that's what I want from Israel. I want them to do whatever they have to do without asking for help, because if I'm doing something, if I'm doing something that might be close to being a crime, I'm not going to ask other people to do it. I mean, have some honor, go handle your business yourself. If anything, the only thing we should do is just not let Iran, get involved. I'm all for that, like being the referee, but that's about it. Other than that, it's like, I'm not giving you money. You figure your problems out. That's how I feel. I mean, you have to understand, I love the Jews. I love everybody, period. I love all the land, all the people. But at the same time, there is, being a Christian, I love Jesus Christ. I love the Lord more than anybody. That comes first to me. And a lot of the Jews are not Christians, and a lot of that may be a good thing, because once they know of Jesus Christ, I mean, the world's going to end anyways at that point. But what I'm saying is, they're not Christians. And also, there's a couple of parts in the Bible that tell you to be careful of those who say they are Jews but are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. So there is an element of evil that can be in Israel, and that is not anti-Semitic. That's only what people say. Just like the people in America that say call you a racist because they can't win an argument. It's similar. Anybody on this planet can be scrutinized. Anybody, and it should never be, as long as it's an honest criticism and scrutiny. Throwing the word racist around or anti-Semitic, whatever, it to me it's silly. It's not even a good argument. So I don't really care if that whole defamation league. If anything, whenever I hear the defamation league speak, I usually can't stand to hear them speak because it's so stupid. They complain and cry about everything, and it's the way it is. When somebody complains all the time, you're going to cause people not to like you. That's what happens. Now, I'm saying about the defamation league, so get that clear, not about the Israelites. But like I said, I am aware of the evil Israelites, the ones that claim to be Jews but are that are not. I mean, look at some of the industries. Who runs the porn industry? For the longest time, I believe the Jews run that, and they run a lot of things. Now, but like I said, I'm not one of those that say, well, look at the Jews are destroying the world, or they're doing this. What I will say is God did as he said in the Bible and made them unique in that they're going to be blessed. And so they do have their hands in a lot of things. The problem is because they're not Christians, they don't do things the right way. And that's most likely why they've had to deal with so much calamity, because they still haven't went back to the way they were in the past, is my opinion on it. But the part I struggle with, because like I said, I'm not a scholar, is what part of that is because it's supposed to be that way at the moment. What part of that is, you want them to, right? You want them to recognize Jesus, but at the same time, according to what I heard, once they recognize who Jesus is, I think that's pretty much the end of it all, right? Hey, Chatty, is that is correct, right? In the Bible, once the Israelites today, or the Jews, once they realize who Jesus is, I mean, that's pretty much the end of everything, isn't it?
In Christian theology, many believe that when the Jewish people recognize Jesus as the Messiah, it will be a significant event tied to the end times. Different interpretations exist, but many see it as a key prophetic milestone.
Well, yeah, according to the Christian Bible, once they realize who Jesus is, that's it, right? That doesn't it close, like, as far as anybody believing in Christ and getting to heaven and all that, it's kind of like it's over. Like right now is the period, just like was it the Amorites that had the 400 years that they had to repent? Like, this is our time to kind of learn about Christ before the doors close. Isn't that the way it kind of is?
That's a perspective held by many Christians, yes. The idea is that we're currently living in a period of grace where people have the opportunity to come to know Christ. Some Christians see parallels with the period given to the Amorites. The belief is that once certain prophetic events occur, including the recognition of Jesus by the Jewish people, that period of grace might come to a close.
So see, that's what I'm saying. So that's the part in my own mind where I haven't figured that part out yet, completely. And I'm not ashamed to say that. Hey, it's hard to have that. You can't have all the answers. I mean, I don't know anyone that does. But so yeah, once they realize who Jesus is, I mean, because as far as I know, I believe they will probably take in the Antichrist before Jesus anyways. I think that's exactly how it goes. You guys can go ahead and look that up a little bit more, research that a little bit more. So we went from Keith Jennings playing whack-a-mole with those CNN panelists, which is always a good time, to I was just going to play some videos right now, but I'm not, because this video is already going to be 40 minutes. But this was just out of nowhere video. Didn't have a lot to do. I rewrote my article, worked hard this week, and now I just need to relax a little bit. I'm going to spend some time with the family. So I just made this video because I was a little bit bored, and the family is swimming right now. So I'm going to go join them. Thanks for listening. God bless. Visit theinforminator.net. Read that article about teaching your children the Christian way. It's a really, really good article. I spent some time on it. I hope you guys enjoy that. Like I said, give this video a like, share it. And Chatty, do you have anything to say to the audience before we finish this one?
Thanks, Anthony. Hey, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the article and find it helpful. Thanks for tuning in, and feel free to drop any questions or comments. Take care.
God bless.
Welcome to theinforminator.net.